Hi everyone, this is Lee Maple with NarLee Creations. This is my second video documenting the creation process of my next wood sculpture, the female volleyball player. Where I left off with the last video was I was talking about having the volleyball player closer, more horizontal to the ground, having the ball closer to the sand. But then after that video, I decided to look at it, and what I didn't like is I didn't like that you really couldn't see the underside of her. And so I decided to get a stick and prop up the volleyball and raise her up some. And I think this is basically where I'm at, and this is, I think, will be where I want to go. Another thing I didn't really talk about during that video was when I was creating the armature underneath the clay using aluminum wire. I took measurements, and so all of those measurements are basically based off of a bunch of proportions, which are all listed, like on some drawings and such, in some books and on the internet. So the main thing I took was basically took some measurements from the heel to the knee, from the knee to the hip, from the hip to the shoulders, the shoulder width and the hip width, and I guess the dimension from the shoulder to the tip of the hands. And that just gave me the general proportions. And so what I'm going to do today is I'm going to actually verify that all of those dimensions are correct, because now that I have clay, because that was just the armature, so now that I have clay, I actually have, I can take measurements of the outside, because that'll be critical when I go to cut out the wood piece. I want to make sure that that everything is exactly where it needs to be, because if anything's off and then I go ahead and cut out the wood, then it's just going to be a big mess, and it'll be really hard to recover from a big mistake like that. So right now I've got to, since this is my pattern that I'll be using to cut out the wood, it's very critical for me to take those measurements and remeasure and make sure that everything's correct. So I'll show you some of the paperwork, some of the documentation which shows the proportions. Like I said, you can find all this information online. If you just do proportions of human anatomy, you'll have a lot of different proportions. So this is one of the many documents that I found on the internet which describes the differences between the female, the male, and the child. So the main rule of thumb that most people use in drawing or sculpting or whatever is basically 7.5 to 8 heads tall. The head is used for lots of different proportions. One is for like the width of the shoulders, and the head equals like a foot length, and the other items like that. So when you take that and you look at basically the differences in proportions between let's say the male and the child, the male is about 7.5 to 8 tall, and the child is about 3 to 4 tall, depending on if it's an infant or a child. Different, on the age, I guess. So moving onto the head, the main rule of thumb here is that there's 5 eyeballs wide, and then the head height is 7 eyeballs high. And there's other proportions, as far as so once you have the main shape of the head, then basically, like the front of the eye and the side view is even to the lips, or to the I guess the crease of your mouth, if you draw a straight line down. And then in the front view, if you look at the corners of your eyes and you take that straight down, that's basically where the nose, how wide the nose is. So that's basically 1 eyeball wide. So if you take these and you can study them, and you get your proportions right, then your sculptures or drawings look much better.